All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second webinar of this series, Financial Aid Friday. So happy Friday. My name is Kaitlyn Goslinga. I am the Assistant Director of Financial Aid here at Pacific, and I am mainly responsible for all of our outreach and also our financial wellness program. I have two of my fabulous colleagues here today helping to moderate, so I'm going to go ahead and give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Malley, and I'm the Associate Director in Financial Aid Counseling Services. So glad that you all have joined us today, and happy Friday.
Hi, my name is Casey Rossi, and I am the Assistant Director of Technical Services and Financial Aid, and welcome.
All right, for all of you that were here last week, perhaps welcome back. If we've got any new folks here, welcome as well. This topic, we are going to be discussing managing the investment in Pacific, and I'll be going over a couple of our objectives here in a moment. But just to start, we will be having topical webinars every single Friday for the rest of this month. I want to say next week is on student loans, so we'll be doing a deep dive into the student loan process and all of your additional loan options in more detail. But along with that, we'll have a couple more on maintaining and keeping your financial aid, what students need to do throughout that process. And then also on our appeals, our special circumstance review process, things we can take into consideration, things we can't, as far as the federal regulations go. So if you are interested in looking at those topics, if those are of particular interest to you, please go ahead and register at go.pacific.edu/FA webinars. But let's go ahead and get started here. Our goals and objectives, things to go over today. We will be discussing the financial aid application process, and then along with that, the financial aid timeline. We're going to highlight the COVID-19 Relief Scholarship. I know we had quite a few questions about this topic last week, so I wanted to make sure that we spent some time going over that. We also are going to go over options to pay the remaining amount due for the year, and then additional opportunities for endowed scholarships and what that process looks like at Pacific. We also will have a Q&A time, so as questions come up when we're going through the slides, if you could go through and type those up in the question and answer box. Casey and Suzanne will be keeping an eye on that, and for frequently asked questions, we will be highlighting those at the end and hopefully getting you the answers that you need for those. So let's go ahead and get started with applying for financial aid. One quick question that came in, will we share the recording after? Yes, I do want to highlight that the recording will be posted at that same go.pacific.edu/FA webinars. Typically within a day or two, I believe our team is able to go through and get those recordings on there. So you can definitely access last week's recording, and this one will be on there as well. So if you're taking notes or if you missed anything, I'll try to speak slowly to go over all of the information, but I know it can be a lot to take in all at once. So yes, the recording will be available afterwards. Thank you for asking. So to start with applying for financial aid, if you have not filed your 2021 FAFSA, or perhaps if you have not gone through and added Pacific to the FAFSA, it is not too late to do so. You can definitely go through and either complete the application or make a correction to your FAFSA to add our school code. And then from there, we'll be able to move forward with putting together a financial aid award package for that individual student. I do want to say the FAFSA is required if you are interested in being evaluated for any grants and then also federal student loans. But merit scholarships and the COVID-19 Relief Scholarship are not need-based, and they do not require the FAFSA. So if you're only interested in those two aid opportunities, the FAFSA is not required. But for any grants and loans, we do need the FAFSA to do that evaluation. If you filed your FAFSA, you will receive the digital award letter from our office. If you are a non-FAFSA filer and you would like to review the amount of your scholarship or check on the COVID-19 Relief Scholarship as well, you can actually review your aid through the Inside Pacific portal. And that is the student portal, where students can log in with their Inside Pacific, their Pacific Net ID and password. That does get sent out in the initial acceptance letter that students receive from our admissions office. And I do want to say, if your student is having trouble getting into this portal, I would recommend contacting our IT department. They would be able, our IT help desk, they would be able to help you troubleshoot that if you're having some login issues. I do want to take a minute to say, consider filing your FAFSA each year. I think especially this year, none of us expected that we would be going through some kind of global pandemic, or that all of a sudden in such a quick time period that incomes would be disrupted and there'd be such a major change in kind of the fabric of our society. And so with that being said, when things like this come up, if we have a FAFSA on file initially, even if perhaps you didn't qualify for any additional grants or aid, at that point, it's an easier process for us to consider any additional updates we might be able to make due to income losses or income reductions. If we don't have a FAFSA on file initially, that then delays that process, or perhaps could keep you from receiving additional aid, just depending on the aid resource. So that's my plug, just to file your FAFSA each year. It does take less than an hour on average to complete for most families, so not too much of your time. And it's kind of a good safety net, just in case, you know, something like this comes up, as we've seen from this last year. So moving on to the financial aid timeline. Also encouraging you to file your FAFSA as early as possible to ensure a timely financial aid award, especially once you start at Pacific and then kind of move through your academic years here. The FAFSA goes online for each new academic year on October 1st. So students that are starting their first year in the fall term, very shortly after, you know, just a few months, the FAFSA goes online for October 1st. So you already are thinking about financial aid for year number 2, just a few months after the first year has started. So if you have a chance, get online in October and do it. But if not, you still have plenty of time to get it done, simply because awards for our second year students are typically sent out during the month of May for their next year. We do send out these award notifications out only by email. We're trying to save some paper and save some trees. So for your student, keep an eye on their Pacific email address over the summer or after their spring semester, as we will send out an award notification by email when their award is ready to review. And if for some reason moving forward in the financial aid process, if you see any type of scholarship aid or grant, loan, you know, whatever it is that's perhaps missing that you had the year prior, please contact our office. We would love to look at that for you, just to see if perhaps it is an eligibility issue. Maybe you didn't requalify for a certain federal grant, for example. Or as always, you know, a lot of our systems are based on algorithms, and just like humans, computers are not perfect either. So at times, I've seen funds not roll over from year to year. It doesn't happen too often, but occasionally I've seen that happen. So contact our office if anything is missing. Kind of keep a close eye on that award. We'd be happy to check on that for you if that is the case. All right, the COVID-19 Relief Scholarship. This week we have gone through the process of adding this scholarship to many of our incoming students' accounts. We haven't quite gotten through the whole list yet, but we certainly are working on them. This will be a $1,450 annual scholarship that is available for not only our continuing students, but our new incoming students as well. You will receive this scholarship for each year of enrollment based on your entering class year. So an example of this: if you are a brand new first year freshman student entering in the fall of 2020, you would be eligible to receive this scholarship for a maximum of 8 consecutive semesters. There are a few caveats to this. If you are in one of the pre-health advantage programs, very specifically the pre-dental program or the pre-pharmacy program, you would only be eligible for the pre-portion of that program. So either the 2, 3, or 4 years that you spend on the main Stockton campus before you go over to the Thomas J. Long School of Pharmacy to finish up your PharmD program, or the Degoni School of Dentistry to earn your DDS. Unfortunately, that scholarship will not follow you to your professional degree program. Our transfer students are eligible for a maximum of 6 consecutive semesters, just depending on what your entering class year is based on your transcript evaluation. In order to receive this fund from year to year, you do have to be full-time and you have to maintain satisfactory academic progress, which is our policy that states students need to maintain a 2.0 GPA and complete 67% of all of the units or the courses that they attempt or that they're still enrolled for after our add drop period. And if you have filed a FAFSA, we will go through and send out a new award letter notification that will be emailed with the additional scholarship. It will update all of the amounts due accordingly based on that value. If you are a non-FAFSA filer, again, the way that our system is set up, it unfortunately can't send you out that digital award notice, but you can go through and view the scholarship through Inside Pacific. Another few notes as far as eligibility goes, it cannot exceed the overall cost of attendance. And there are a few limitations imposed. For example, if you are perhaps a student athlete, and then also the state of California that issues the Cal Grant, if you're a Cal Grant recipient, if your need is covered by other grants and scholarships, very likely we wouldn't be able to incorporate this scholarship into your aid eligibility. But I do want to say that this is only, from what we've seen so far, only a very small group of students. We do anticipate that a majority of our students will be eligible for this scholarship. And like I said, it can't exceed our cost of attendance. So the classic example, if you are a student athlete, you've got a full ride covered by the NC2A. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to award that scholarship on top of everything. The cost of attendance does include all of our tuition and fees, also our estimates for books and supplies, personal expenses, room and board, the entire dollar value of all of those mandatory direct expenses, and also estimates for indirect expenses. You do not need to apply for this scholarship. It is an automatic review process in which we will be going through all of our students' accounts individually and getting those added. As you can imagine, it's taken us just a little bit of time to implement everything, but we're working as quickly as we can to get those awards updated. All right, moving on to options to pay the remaining amount that's due for the academic year. There is a monthly payment plan offered through the Office of Student Accounts. If you are interested in looking at additional information about payment plan options, their website is really easily accessible at go.pacific.edu/student-accounts. But for each semester, they offer either a 3-month payment plan or a 5-month payment plan. So for example, if you elect the 3-month payment plan, you would have payments August, September, October. And then for the spring semester again, January, February, March. If you elect the 5-month payment plan, that adds on 2 additional payments. So essentially August through December and then January through May, to give you a little bit more flexibility as far as what you're paying every month. There is a one-time enrollment fee per term that's due along with your first payment. The 3-month plan is a $25 fee, and then the 5-month plan is a $75 enrollment fee. Another option to consider for paying the remaining amount due would be the Parent Plus loan. This application just went online a few days ago, I believe on the 28th. The Department of Education was a little bit delayed getting the 2021 year application online, but it is available now at the studentaid.gov website. And if you're applying for the entire year, the loan period, the dates that you pop into the application, you would want to enter August of 2020 to May of 2021. It's a pretty common question we get for the Plus Loan application. And we'll be going into more details about the Plus Loan in our loans webinar coming up. Another option to consider would be a private loan through a bank or a credit union. The main difference between these two options, The Parent Plus loan is only in the name of the parent. The student has no legal association with it and technically also not liable for paying it back. With a private loan, that often is a little bit different, where the student is the co-signer, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The student is the applicant with the parent being the co-signer. The student, 95% of the time, I would imagine, would need an adult co-signer in order to be approved for a private loan. These are offered through banks, credit unions, other financial institutions, to go through and review of what private loans you might want to look into if you're not even sure where to start as far as looking for a private loan. I would recommend heading to the website elmselect.com. This is a database of all the different private lenders that we work with. You can kind of compare and contrast interest rates. This is not the exclusive list. There are other private loan options that are out there, but these are common private lenders that are used by our students at Pacific. I do also want to highlight the federal work-study program. We had quite a few questions about this in our webinar last week. If you are eligible for federal work-study, you will see it at the bottom section of your digital award. You can also review it through Inside Pacific as well. This is a $2,000 award given to those who demonstrate the most financial need at Pacific, simply because we get a certain allocation from the Department of Education. It's a small amount. We try to spread it out to the best of our abilities, but it is awarded to students who do have the most financial need. And this dollar amount is earned as you go, as you work throughout the academic year. It's not applied to the bill all at once. You do have to go through likely an interview process, get hired for an individual department, but once you do, you can start earning out of that $2,000 work-study allocation. This money can be used to go towards payments, perhaps monthly payments, or also pay for books and supplies, other educational expenses that you may have. If you are not eligible, that does not mean that you cannot work on campus. You probably just need to be a little bit more selective in your job filterings through the Tiger Jobs portal. The department will indicate if the job requires you to be awarded federal work study or not. And if it does, likely that may not be an option for you if you're not work study eligible. But there are departments on campus that have bigger budgets that can hire, more students and don't necessarily need to rely on the money from the federal government through this award. So if you are interested in looking at career opportunities, I know this is a really common question we get from students. Our career services webpage has quite a few details about that process. I know that they used to use the Tiger Jobs portal. They're actually moving to a different portal called Handshake. I'm not sure if they've fully made that transition yet, but the Handshake portal will be where your student can kind of go through and search for jobs. Used to be called Tiger Jobs, so if you hear that, Handshake is kind of the equivalent name for the student search portal for jobs on campus. Typically, students start working about a week or so. They can start working about a week or so before school starts for federal work study. So there may be the possibility that you might land a job before you even get to campus, which would be great. So definitely take a look at the Career Services website. All right, I would like to take a moment to highlight additional scholarship opportunities as you continue through Pacific. So we have more than 75 additional scholarship opportunities for all of our continuing students. So these funds are endowed scholarships, meaning they are provided by donors who give back to Pacific. And our donors do like to reward hardworking Tigers. So with that being said, the student does have to have an established academic record at Pacific to go through and apply. You need to have a 3.0 minimum GPA to be considered. This is quite a competitive process. We've had really good turnout for all of our students applying for these funds for this academic year. But if you are meeting the GPA requirement after your fall semester, you will receive an email from our office that will invite you to apply in the spring semester of your first year to hopefully be considered or perhaps be eligible for additional scholarship money beginning in your second year. So hopefully that's pretty clear. It's not available for brand new incoming students now, but if you're meeting that GPA requirement, you will be invited to apply for your second year. So definitely some incentive there to get to Pacific, keep your GPA up as high as you possibly can, because that definitely would help you in that review process. Our professional degree programs do also have their own endowed scholarship. So if you are moving on to either the dental program, pharmacy program, or perhaps McGeorge School of Law, for example, they also have their own endowed scholarship opportunities that you may be able to apply for as well in graduate school to perhaps keep maybe the level of student loans down that you're considering borrowing. They definitely do have additional opportunities too. If you want to check out just kind of a preliminary review of what that portal looks like, it is at pacific.academicworks.com. We call this our Tiger Scholarships portal. And I'll just show you kind of a quick screenshot of what that portal looks like as the student. If you see in the top right-hand corner, the student would be prompted to sign in. Right now, our application period is available for all of our students within the School of Dentistry. So they are going through the application and review process currently. The time period that our undergraduate application is typically open is from about January to about mid-March. So definitely quite a bit of time for your student to go through and complete the application if they are invited to go through and apply. And on that portal, if you scroll down, you can kind of go through all the pages of the additional endowed scholarship opportunities. Some of them are very specific, meaning that the donor had a certain specification of the type of student or the academic profile they're looking at. For example, I believe there's one titled Advancing Women Leadership in Engineering. I don't think I quite got that title right, but it's a scholarship that is looking for female students within the School of Engineering because that is perhaps maybe the donor's background. So all of the scholarships vary in kind of what they're looking for and their preferences, but students can go through and kind of take a look to see what might be available in the future for them. And with that being said, that is the end of our presentation here of kind of the different options you have as far as financing the Pacific education. If there are any questions, I would be more than happy to answer those for you.
We do have one question. I know this is something that we'll do another webinar on, and it's about loans. So it's kind of a little peek into our loan webinar coming up. Someone is asking about, do all loans need to be accepted or declined at once, or do you get to decline half of the amount each semester? So I was hoping you could talk about the advantages of accepting your loans or taking a look at those for the entire year.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question. And I'll be honest, whichever option you decide to do, it doesn't matter. And I will say that simply because at any point, if you decline a loan during the academic year, we can go through and reset that into an offered status for you to accept if you decide you need the funds. You can go semester by semester. As far as interest accruing on the loans, you don't need to worry about accepting everything all at once and then interest accruing later on, because if you have a student loan that does accrue interest, it starts to accrue at the point the loan pays to your student account. So half of the loan pays in the fall semester, the other half will pay in the spring. So even if you have accepted for the entire year, interest won't accrue until those individual semesters start. So really it's your preference. I would recommend, if you know that you're going to need the loans, or if you're at least anticipating that you likely will, go through and accept for the entire year. Just because sometimes you get really busy with your studies. I do see this happen all the time. And students forget to kind of go back in and accept for the spring semester. So if you're anticipating needing those student loans, it's probably easiest just to kind of get it out of the way all at once. It won't matter either way for the interest. If you do have an unsubsidized loan, for example, that will be accruing interest while you're in school, that won't start until each individual semester begins. So hopefully that answers that question.
Hi, Kaitlyn. I have a question about Cal Grant. Can you go over that a little bit on how that works for transfer students?
Yes, definitely a good question. I will be completely honest. The Cal Grant program can definitely be a little bit complicated, especially as it pertains to all of the rules and eligibility requirements for our transfer students. So typically the two main components for a student to be considered for Cal Grant eligibility is you do need to have filed your FAFSA by March 2nd, so just a few months ago, and then also go through and have your GPA submitted by your school that you were attending prior, either your junior college, community college, or another state school, UC perhaps, another private. They would need to submit your GPA to the California Student Aid Commission by March 2nd as well. Most schools do this automatically, but you would probably want to double check to see if your school went through and submitted your GPA. From there, we go through and review your eligibility through the Web Grants portal. If you went along kind of the traditional path of transferring, 2 years right out of high school and then over to, a 4-year institution, your likelihood of being considered for a Cal Grant is typically higher, just because you are going along what they call the entitlement path. If it took you a little bit longer to finish up your associate's degree or whatever your time period is before going to a 4-year institution, you perhaps may have been put into a competitive pool, meaning there's kind of a point scoring system. And that's what I'm saying. It gets a little bit complicated, and we would be happy to go through and review your individual eligibility for the student that asked. If you wouldn't mind contacting our office, we can definitely check on that. For students that are not Cal Grant eligible for one reason or another, we do actually consider that in our review process for any UOP grant funds. So if you're not eligible for the Cal Grant, we likely have awarded a higher UOP grant to kind of help make up for that. So hopefully that information is helpful.
Thank you. And let's see, we do have another question about loans. Is there a deadline for accepting those?
So yes and no. Yes, meaning if you are wanting those loans applied to your bill for the fall semester, a good rule of thumb is probably to have the entire loan process finalized at least by July or so, simply so we can have some time to process that loan file and have those funds applied for your August payment. If you're not sure if you're going to need them, or at least are not thinking about them for the first semester, at any time during the academic year, you can go through and accept a loan or increase the loan amount if you didn't borrow the maximum initially. So no strict deadline, those funds will be available all during the academic year. But if you do want them applied to your bill or the amount that's going to be due for the fall semester, I would advise to go through and accept them within the next few months here. You have plenty of time to finalize that process, but toward the beginning of July would be great.
Okay, here's another one. Looking at the financial aid award letter under cost of attendance, what is the exact amount that is owed to UOP that the student is responsible for? Is that just what's labeled as specific tuition, or is it the total including books and supplies, miscellaneous, etc.?
Great question. So the cost of attendance, depending on where you are looking at it, if you're looking at on the award letter or the paper award letter, there will be two components. There will be direct costs, that would be Pacific tuition and all of our student body fees combined. And then also indirect costs. Those are estimates for books and supplies, personal miscellaneous expenses like you had mentioned. Those are not things that are going to be billed to the student account. They're simply estimates just to help you kind of plan for the academic year of just additional out-of-pocket costs that come up, like miscellaneous and personal expenses. If your student's living on campus, they've got to pay for, shampoo, conditioner, entertainment costs, if you're going out to the movies, things like that. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but the direct costs would only be tuition and fees. And then if the student isn't living on campus, the cost for whatever their room assignment is and the meal plan they end up choosing. with that being said, if you're looking at the award letter and you want to know, hey, what is it that I owe directly to Pacific? What is that dollar amount going to be? You will want to look for the wording that says estimated annual bill owed to Pacific. That should only subtract out the direct costs in the cost of attendance, and then any scholarships and grants and federal student loans that your student is eligible for. All right, team, what do we got coming next?
Kaitlyn, here's a question about from someone. If I don't want to do monthly payments, can I pay the full amount? And then there is
question.
A follow-up question about, is there a discount for doing the full payment?
You do not have to go through and sign up for the monthly payment plan. You can pay once per semester, August 1st and then January 1st for the academic year. And there's not a discount, but you do not have to pay that either $25 or $75 enrollment fee if you are planning on utilizing the payment plan in its place. So that's a great question. You do not have to do the monthly payment plan if you would not like to.
I have another billing question. For the 3 or 5 month payment option, when do we need to decide which option we are using? When will invoices be sent out or be made available online?
All right, I will do my best to address this. This is within our student accounts office's domain. I know just enough information about their process to be dangerous. So with that being said, typically what happens is you sign up for one of the summer orientations. Through the orientation process, you'll be working with a faculty advisor to go through and register for your classes. At the point that you register, that then will trigger the billing process through our student accounts department. If you're not registered for any courses, there is nothing that we can bill you for. So depending on your registration date, that will then depend when you get notified by our student accounts department of kind of what your finalized bill will be. We do our best estimate we can. We have our tuition and fees. The only additional fees that we cannot account for at this time would be those various course fees that you'd be signing up for. So for example, if you need to take a biology lab, there may be a biology lab fee associated with that class that you're taking. Just because classes are so individualized and there's so many of them, there's no way we can kind of predict for any individual student's course fees. I know that our student accounts team does a great job of sending out those billing invoices. I believe they typically send them out through email. I'm not sure if they do have an initial paper bill that they send out. I can't quite recall if they do that or are still doing that, but definitely keep an eye on your email. There also will be a billing portal that you will be able to log into to go through and review your invoice. That is called the CashNet billing portal, and you can access it through Inside Pacific. There is also a link through the student account section of the webpage as well. So yeah, the time frame, I don't have an exact date. It will kind of all depend when you attend orientation and at what point you go through it and get registered for all of those courses. One thing that I do want to tell students and parents, all of the information initially gets sent to your student. They are typically now considered an adult, at least in the eyes of the federal government, but I do know that many parents are obviously definitely concerned about cost. They're the ones paying typically. So with that being said, students will need to add their parent or parents or guardian, other supporter as an authorized user for that authorized user to then go through and receive those billing statements, the invoice information, or to be able to get, finalized figures through our student accounts office released to them. So students, you'll want to make sure to go through and add your parent as an authorized user. They have the process set out on the student accounts section of the Pacific webpage for that.
Kaitlyn, we have another question about what if I haven't received the financial aid paper? So maybe the steps of how you get a financial aid offer from us.
Yes. So for us to go through and send out the official award notice by email or also by mail, you do need to have filed a FAFSA and be eligible for any kind of federal student aid. So with that being said, you'd have to file the FAFSA. That then kind of triggers the review process. If for some reason you are not eligible for the FAFSA, or if you are only planning on receiving a merit scholarship, you would want to go through and then review your scholarship eligibility through the Inside Pacific portal. There's a couple steps to get there, but you log in mainly to Inside Pacific and you hit the administrative tab. From there, there's an option that says click here too, and it's review your transcript, sign up for classes. Once you hit that button, you'll see financial aid, and then you can go through and review any of your scholarship eligibility. So the best way for us to send out that award notice is you would need to file the FAFSA and be eligible for that additional federal aid. We can always check on that too if you have questions about your individual account, or you thought you sent the FAFSA or you're not sure if you're eligible. We can definitely look that up for you as well.
The next question, what's the best method of contact to schedule a one-on-one meeting with the financial?
That is a great question. First, apologies for my dog barking in the background here. The challenges of working from home. So to address that kind of in a more roundabout way, very typically during the academic year when we are on campus, we don't typically take scheduled appointments. Just for the flexibility of our students, you can come on in during our office hours, you can meet with a walk-in counselor, you don't have to schedule something with us. But if you would like to schedule a specific time, or if you're not regularly available to call the main 209-946-2421 number you see on that questions screen, if you could send us an email and just indicate that you would like to schedule, something one-on-one, we can go through and see when our calendars might align. But mainly our counselors, they do operate on a walk-in basis. So you do not have to have a scheduled appointment to reach us. You can simply give us a call at that line or send us an email, because obviously we're kind of all working remotely at this time, and we'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions whenever you're free. But if you would like to request some sort of scheduled appointment, definitely feel free to email us and we can get that worked out for you. And to probably help speed up that process, if you could maybe list a few times during the week that you are regularly available, that would probably be helpful as well.
Thank you. Kaitlyn, the next question we have is, can my students' FAFSA be reevaluated if both myself and my husband have been furloughed because of the COVID?
Yes, that is something we absolutely can take a look at. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into evaluating income, just kind of given the uncertainty that we're in right now, but we would be more than happy to look at that for you. To start, if you could send an email to our office, just kind of describing when the furlough began, also when you and your partner, if you anticipate being able to go back to work, when that date might be. Along with that, we would need documentation of the furlough. So if you've got a letter from your employer, or if you filed for unemployment, for example, and you've got your unemployment claim, that would be helpful as well if you could include all of that. We may need to look at some specific tax information, just depending on what is listed on your FAFSA, but we'll follow back up with you for any additional documentation that we may need. But yes, absolutely, definitely email our office and we'd be happy to take a look at that for you. Can't guarantee additional aid, just depending on the circumstances financially, but we will definitely look to see what we can do.
Okay, let's see. When do students need to start paying back their federal loans?
Yes, if you have borrowed a federal loan, repayment begins 6 months after graduation, or if you drop below that of a half-time student, which is typically less than 6 units. That doesn't happen frequently, but I just thought I would throw that out there. But yeah, for most students, you begin repayment. You've got a grace period of 6 months after your graduation date. So it gives you some time to get settled, find a job, and then you go through and you start making payments on your federal student loans.
Okay, and then There are a few people who logged in late that missed the beginning. So can you go over again where they can access this video recording?
Yes, absolutely. So if you head to go.pacific.edu/FA webinars, you will be able to go through and review all the upcoming webinars. But then when the recording is available, typically within a few business days at the most, we will post the recording of this webinar there so you can go through and catch the beginning.
Kaitlyn, next question is about Cal Grant. And the question is, can the Cal Grant cover room and board?
The Cal Grant A is tuition specific, meaning that it can only be applied to your tuition. So when we're doing those calculations, that is something that we have to go through and take into consideration. It can only be applied to tuition. Good question, though.
And another good question. What if we received our financial aid award letter, but are planning to live off campus, and the letter indicated the student was living on campus? How do we make that change?
Gotcha. So initially when we review your aid eligibility, we go off of what was indicated on your FAFSA. So whether you said living on campus, living with parents at home, or living off campus. So that is how we initially came up with the cost of attendance. If that has changed, you definitely will want to contact our office, because we will have to go through to obviously adjust your cost of attendance accordingly. And then that could potentially impact your financial aid awards. We would want to make sure you just kind of know what that's going to look like, perhaps even before you've made one final decision one way or the other. So yes, definitely let us know if that doesn't look quite right to you. We can go through and update that for you. Absolutely. All right, so I do actually see a question here. Students stated that they're having some issues paying the enrollment and orientation fee because of COVID-19. Is there any way to have the fee waived or deferred? I would have to say probably the best bet would be to get in contact with your admissions counselor to see if there's anything they can do about that. I can't make any guarantees one way or the other, but they would be happy to look at that, see if there might be another option for you. That's kind of all addressed with our admissions team, because that is part of the admission confirmation process. So I would recommend getting in touch either with the general admissions line, or if you know who your individual admissions counselor is, get in touch with them, and they'd be able to let you know if that might be a possibility.
Okay, and then another Cal Grant question. Is the Cal Grant award applied annually or every semester?
It is an annual award, however, it is broken up by semester. So you've got one set dollar amount for your Cal Grant. Half of it will pay in the fall. The other half of it will be dispersed in the spring semester. And that is typically the same for a majority of financial aid awards, some of which we are required to disperse in half. Half of it pay in the fall, the other half of it pay in the spring. So while you will see just your general financial aid award for the year, everything is cut in half. Billing, half due in the fall, half of your aid applied in the fall, the same thing for the spring semester.
Kaitlyn, that's a good question about Cal Grant. Can you talk a little more about if a student has a Cal Grant and whether they have to reapply for the Cal Grant every year and what steps that might be?
Yes, absolutely. So if you have been awarded a Cal Grant, that means you've done your FAFSA, you meet all of the income criteria. For your Cal Grant to be renewed for your second year, the only thing you need to do is refile your FAFSA. As long as you are meeting all of the income ceilings, which are just reset by the California Student Aid Commission each year, as long as you continue to meet those ceilings, your Cal Grant will be renewed. Very typically, students can have it for up to 4 years, sometimes 5, just depending on what type of program you are in. So To have your Cal Grant renewed, you just need to refile your FAFSA. You don't need to worry about resending a GPA. That process already happened initially to make you eligible from the start.
And then as just one quick follow-up, if you don't have a Cal Grant in your first year, to reapply or to apply for it again in your second year, you then do follow the steps of the GPA verification form along with the FAFSA.
Yes, so you would need to go back to either your high school or the college that you transferred from to have your GPA resent to try to requalify for your second year. So that's a good point, Suzanne. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so is it possible to accept scholarships but decline loans, and where can I do this?
So any scholarships and grants that you have been awarded, they are automatically accepted for you. So you don't have to go through any other additional steps of saying, yes, I would like to have this scholarship. We know that you want it, so everything is automatically accepted. Now your federal loans, they are in an offered status. So they're neither accepted or declined. You do not have to go through and decline them if you don't want to. You can leave them in an offered status and they will never disperse to your account. If you want the loans though, you do have to go through and accept them, complete all of the necessary loan paperwork. But if you want to decline them, if you know you're absolutely not going to need them, you can go through and decline through Inside Pacific, but you can also just leave them in that offered status. Both of them are essentially the same. It'll just save you a little bit of time. If you decide you need them later on, you don't need to recontact us for us to put them back into that offered status if you declined them, if that makes sense.
And another great question, and it's very appropriate for today, is today still the deadline to accept admission for UOP?
Yes, today is still the deadline, but I do know if you feel like you need some additional time to go through and kind of think through that decision, definitely reach out to admissions and they can kind of look to see what they can do on working with you on extending that. Once again, can't make any guarantees, just depending on your program, but I know that they have been trying to be as flexible as they can with all of our students because we know that there's a lot going on right now. So reach out to your individual admissions counselor if you know who that is. If you do not, they can be reached at admissions@pacific.edu, or their phone number is on the website. Sorry, that's one of the ones I've forgotten off the top of my head, but you could definitely give their office a call as well.
Okay, I'm looking at one other one. So chose to live off campus.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to change my mind and live on campus mid-year, so for the spring semester? If so, what might that process look like?
So to start that process, I would definitely recommend reaching out to our housing department because they would have to do an evaluation just to see what dorms or what apartments, depending on what type of student you are available during the regular academic year, especially midterm. So if you're thinking about that, maybe partway through the fall, I would definitely go through and reach out to the housing department. They can confirm that and then let us know, and we can kind of see how that might impact your aid eligibility, what your updated costs would be. We would love to chat with you about that for sure.
Okay, and then I did just real quickly want to add that I am posting links on the chat. You can go in, there's links for admissions questions, housing contact information, our COVID relief scholarship FAQ, and then we have another question. If you were awarded the President Scholarship, would you like to defer your, would like to defer your acceptance to UOP next year? Do you still retain the President Scholarship or do you have to reapply it? To it. I'm going to let Kaitlyn handle this, but I am also going to post the link again for the admissions resources link that does address that question as well.
Yes, definitely a good question. Very typically, we are able to do that. If for some reason, though, you end up taking other college courses or attending elsewhere, and then looking to come back for your second year, At that point, you're considered technically a transfer student, so the merit would look a little bit different. But if you are interested in deferring, we can definitely look to see what we can do to preserve as much of that aid eligibility as possible. I certainly would reach out to your admission counselor if that is something you are interested in. They can do that evaluation for you to see if that's something that they're able to do. But yeah, very typically we're able to kind of hold that scholarship eligibility in its place if you're going to defer. All right, I think that we've addressed all of those open questions there. I know we have just a couple more minutes. I don't know if there's anything else that came through. Oh, actually, it looks like we've got one here. Someone asked, what is the President's Scholarship? So the President's Scholarship is one of our academic merit scholarships that our incoming first-year students are automatically considered for. So depending on your GPA and your test scores, you may be awarded one of our merit scholarships. And we have all of them listed in the typical profiles of students that are considered for them. So you can always check that out through the financial aid section of the Pacific webpage. All right, we've got time for just a few more questions. If anybody else has anything they would like us to address today. So someone asked if the fall semester is online, will there be any tuition adjustments? And if so, can you speculate what that will be? You know, that is a very good question, and I unfortunately do not have exact answers for you. I truly wish I did, but I do know that many of our leadership teams are looking at just all of the different possibilities for fall and what that might mean for our students as far as their education. Obviously, their safety is our #1 priority. And I'm certain they will be looking at seeing how that might impact possibly tuition and financial aid as well. So I'm so sorry I don't have an exact answer for you. At this time, we are hoping and planning on welcoming everyone back for the fall and taking all of the necessary precautions that we need in hopes to prevent having to go online. But if we are directed to do so, obviously, like I said, the safety of our students is our top priority. But there are teams that are looking at that, and if we have any information regarding that, that certainly will be sent out by email. All right, someone asked, if I am a first-year student, how many units am I able to transfer from dual enrollment programs? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that. That would definitely be an admissions question. I do know that for our transfer students, the maximum of units they are able to transfer over would be 70. So my guess that that may also be similar for dual enrollment, but your admissions counselor would be able to let you know for sure. Someone also asked where they can get a course catalog. I would contact our registrar's office. I believe that the course catalog is online. I don't think they print it out anymore, but the registrar's office certainly would be able to help you with that.
And I just posted the link to the online catalog.
Excellent, thank you, Casey. All right, anybody else? Any other questions coming through today? If not, and you want more information about student loans or about the financial aid appeal process, definitely register for our upcoming webinars. We'll be doing a more thorough, in-depth review of all of those topics. Hopefully just to help educate on the financial aid process and the often confusing process that it can be. We certainly recognize that. And so our goal with these webinars was just to kind of bring some more transparency to the application process, the review process. And so we hope that we've been successful in that, and we're looking forward to the upcoming weeks. There will be a survey that's sent out. If you all wouldn't mind filling that out, that's really helpful to us as we're kind of trying to navigate this new format with these webinars and trying to figure out how to best use Zoom to this capability. So if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes of your day to fill out that survey, we would really, really appreciate it. And perhaps if there's any other content you would like to see, any other topics you want us to cover, you could definitely include that there as well. We're certainly looking at these options for the future. I know we've just got a couple minutes left, but if we don't have any other questions coming through here in the next minute or so, I just want to say thank you all so much for taking an hour out of your very busy days to chat with us about financial aid. We really, really do appreciate it. And we are here to support you in any way we can. All right, I don't think we have anything else coming through. So with that being said, once again, thank you all so much for attending today. We really appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and a great weekend. Thank you so much.